So now for the next part of the build, I'll be focusing on the engine build. So I'll be collecting all the parts that I need for the engine. So these are the colors that I will be using to paint the engine and the radiators and a few other parts. So I'll be using a chrome silver, a flat aluminium, a gunmetal, red, blue, flat black and normal black. So all the parts are painted for the engine, so I will start to assemble them and get them ready to be put into the chassis. So I got all the parts glued together on the engine, so I'll be installing everything onto the main chassis now. So I installed all the engine parts and the radiator, the seat, there's few bit of engine parts that I installed in the main chassis. So after the engine is glued together and glued onto the main chassis, I'm going to start preparing and painting the suspension parts, and it's a front steering rack, bumper, things like that. There's the diff, so I'll get all those stuff and start painting. So I got all the parts that we needed. This is the rear diff, rear suspension, front axle, front suspension, steering part. So we'll paint them now. So all the parts are painted now. I've got the steering rack and the front suspension, the rear suspension, the wing mount there, the diff and the axle. Got the front bumper and the steering arm. So I'll start installing all the parts now. So I'll be cutting out the next few parts that I need for the build and getting them ready to paint. So I painted a few parts and it's time to install them on the car. So I installed all the suspension pieces on the car. The rear diff is installed, and the axle with the suspension parts, and then the front steering rack and the suspension parts have been installed.